Port Orchard City Council regular meeting. Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we've got a pretty full agenda tonight, so jump right into it. Are there any amendments to this evening's agenda? Is Councilmember Chang's excusal on here?
No, he's.
Is he?
I just got a message from him. He tripped,
Uh-oh, that's
and he will be about 15 minutes late.
hopefully the bear doesn't get him that's up in our neighborhood today.
Uh-oh.
Earlier
Bear?
today. There was a bear. Huh? I'll show you a picture later. So the bear's been taken care of.
So do we need, do we need to
excuse him if he's going to be late, Brandy?
By 15 minutes?
I hear the door.
That's Mark.
Okay. What's your take on that, Brandy? Should we excuse Councilmember Chang if he's going to be late?
If for sure he's going to be late, you don't need an excusal, but if it's uncertain, then you can excuse him, and then if he shows up, we note it in the minutes.
Let's excuse him if he shows up.
Okay. Do I have a motion?
Second.
What was it? A motion for excusal and a second added to the consent agenda, I'm sure. So, is item IJ. Any other, we're voting on the excusal of Councilmember Chang, adding that to the consent agenda as item J. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that has been added to the consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve the agenda as amended.
Second.
All right, we have a motion, a second, to approve the agenda as amended. Any further discussion of this evening's agenda? All in favor of approving the amended agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the agenda is approved. We are to our first citizen comment period, and this for any item that's on this evening's agenda. So, Mr. Campbell, you want, or Mr. Mahan, go ahead. Either one of you.
Good evening, members of the Portage Council and Mayor. I represent the
And-
Kitsap
okay, Bill,
Public.
If you could just identify by your.
Okay.
role for the
My name is
record.
Bill Mahan, and I represent the city of Port Orchard on the Kitsap Public Facility District. And you have an item tonight under your business, item J, the interlocal agreement between the Kitsap PFD and Port Orchard to fund your project that was identified as the #1 project of the PFD. So I'm happy to answer any questions, but I wanted to make 3 comments specifically. First of all, this has been a long and arduous process, and the PFD began 2 years ago, and we received 7 projects. It was very competitive, and it involved every jurisdiction in Kitsap County. So you can imagine the difficulty it was to come to a final decision with regard to the #1 project. So I'm happy that we were able to do that, and I'm happy for the city of Port Orchard. Secondly, I'd like to just make a comment. I know there are a lot of people that are not too happy with the PFD and the process, but it is a citizen committee. It's made up of largely people that have not had experience in dealing with these kinds of issues and money projects. So just remember that when you think about the job that they've done and the job they still have to do. Thirdly, this is personally kind of a bookend project for me. Some 40 years ago, I began working with the Mayor Repenich at that time, and then Mayor Paul Powers of Port Orchard. I found out when I was the county commissioner that the commissioner from South Kitsap had not really attended any meetings with the council and had not worked with them on mutual projects. During that process, there was only one access from West Port Orchard to East Port Orchard, and that was through downtown. And those of you that lived here at that time remember the traffic jams that occurred specifically at evening time. I worked with the 2 mayors and the city council to create an unprecedented partnership between the county and Port Orchard. And within that project and that partnership, we built the Tremont Bridge that opened up the Tremont access to the eastern part of Port Orchard. That interlocal agreement was unprecedented, and it created a partnership that we've never seen, I don't think, since then. For instance, the interlocal agreement identified Port Orchard as the lead agency for the project. And also then Port Orchard hired the Public Works Department of the county to build the project. It was a great project, and I just cannot imagine today what would happen if we didn't have that access through the city or to the west side of South Kitsap. So this project that we're talking about tonight is the bookend to that. I was fortunate, my name is on the interlocal agreement that you'll be signing tonight. And to me, it's a personal satisfaction for the years that I've spent representing South Kitsap and working with the public for public good. So thank you. I know you'll appreciate it. I don't have to even ask you to do that because it's going to be a tremendous project, and it will transform the city of Port Orchard. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer.
Thanks, Bill.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I just have a quick comment before the next one in regards to the bypass bridge. I think Bill was a little modest in his description of the interlocal that we had, because it covered an awful lot of things, as he mentioned, putting the city in charge of the construction of that, which was very unique during the time. But I do remember distinctly, it was a new kid on the finance committee at the time, and we were trying to figure out how we were going to cover our third. And Bill figured out a solution in that the county did the first 2/3 of payments, which allowed the city time to save up funds. So when it came time for us to start making the payments 2/3 of the way down, we had assembled enough dollars that we were able to satisfy the remainder of the debt. So had he not been creative in that sense, we would have not been able to accomplish that. So personal thanks, Bill. I remember it well.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. In the spirit of great cooperation, I'm Eric Campbell here representing McCormick Communities, and I wanted to thank you for your time and tonight and lifting the moratorium, and really wanted to speak to how great the staff has been, not only in a matter of cooperation but collaboration. You know, everyone in this room were kind of throwing a curveball, and instead of everyone, just sitting back, they really dug in. And I also got to thank the mayor. The mayor himself really stepped up. I wanted the council to know they put extraordinary amount of effort. But again, thank you for the staff. Cannot say enough good things, and I look forward to the amount of cooperation. And like you, Mr. Mohan, interlocal agreements, it's a great way to get things done. So thank you so much.
Thank you for
Any
your comments.
questions at all?
No, and
Okay.
when we get to those business items, I know Eric's here to answer questions if we have any.
Okay, thank you so much.
You bet. And anyone else wishing to address the council for items on the agenda this evening? Okay. Moving on, I'm going to close the first citizen comment period. There's a second one at the end of the meeting for items not on the agenda. We are to our consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second it.
A motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Further discussion of this evening's consent agenda?
Mayor, I just had one comment on item number H, just to continue on this moratorium issue. This has been an arduous task, a lot of people involved, and item H here has to deal with the South Kitsap Fire and Rescue. They're part of it, and so just wanted to acknowledge, their participation in this and in helping to create a solution where we could move this. So just wanted to just make note of that. That's part of the consent agenda tonight, and we appreciate that agency assisting with where we're at tonight.
Yeah, it was a team effort from everybody involved, Bremerton, South Kitsap Fire, McCormick Communities, and Port Orchard. So we all played a part in it. So thank you for calling them out for that. So other comments on the consent agenda? Okay, with that, all in favor of approving the amended consent agenda, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the consent agenda is approved. We are to our first business item. We have a resolution that is adopting our 2019-2021, should be 2020, shouldn't it? 2020-2021 legislative agenda. And we have Josh Weiss here, and he's got a brief PowerPoint presentation that he's going to talk about the upcoming session, and then we've got this action item. So Josh.
Well, good evening, and I appreciate the help here technologically with the PowerPoint presentation. Thank you. It's nice to be here. I'm with Gordon Thomas Honeywell. We represent the city down in Olympia, and I've been working with you for a little over a year now. It's really been a pleasure and joy working with you all, and I know I saw Councilmember Ashby and Mayor Patoncio last session several times and worked on your very successful legislative agenda last session. I'm going to go ahead and start because I don't have the slides in front of me, but I actually have a pretty good sense of what I'm going to be talking about. So what we're hoping to accomplish tonight is to give you a little bit of context for this legislative session and what to be expecting for 2020. And then also to present to you the ideas that we've been working on and proposing that we go forward to the legislature for this upcoming session substantively. For the upcoming legislative session, this will be the short session of the biennial process. So last session was 105 days. This session should be 60 days. Thank you so much, Brandy. And we really do, I would say, with the exception maybe of the transportation realm, I really am positive about the prospect of them finishing in 60 days this year. The focus will be really on amending their budgets that they adopted last year in this supplemental budget cycle. The operating budget, just a little bit of context here, actual and forecasted revenue, both for this biennium and for the biennium we're in and for the next biennium, continue to rise. The state last week just received a preview from the Economic Revenue Forecast Council. The state really is looking fairly good in terms of, even with the impacts that trade dispute is having on the state, revenues are continuing. So for this current biennium, we're expecting to see $1.3 billion in state coffers in additional above what they even forecasted. And then in the next biennium, an additional $1.2 billion. So revenues are coming in. The caveat there is to keep in mind that usually with caseload forecasts, inflation, increased costs, the state usually manages to eat up the increases in revenues with additional costs that they have. You're familiar with that in adopting your city budgets, the way costs can rise. Capital budget, this will be a much smaller opportunity for capital funding. They left about $70 billion in bond capacity on the table for this supplemental budget. That is not very much. Most of that will be taken up by new school construction, state facilities, mental health facilities, those types of projects. So pretty limited opportunity in capital budget. Transportation, Initiative 976 really did set the context for what's going to happen this upcoming session and probably the session beyond that. We had been having conversations about a new revenue package prior to the passage of the initiative. I think essentially that need for new revenue to fund new projects is going to get sort of squished together with the conversation around how does the state now respond to the hole that was created by the initiative in the state budget. We just received this evening the Department of Transportation's list that was put together in response to Governor Inslee's executive order telling Department of Transportation to put projects on hold. I am grateful my initial look indicates that I don't think there's anything in Port Orchard that has been impacted, but that conversation is going to be ongoing and is going to be very fluid. And I can tell you, talking to transportation leaders, legislative leaders right now, there's still not consensus about how they move forward with this. The political climate, the Democrats will continue to control the House, the Senate, and the governor's mansion. The big change really in the climate is that will have a new Speaker of the House with Lori Jenkins. Frank Chopp was the Speaker of the House for 20 plus years, unprecedented length of time. And we also, not only a new Speaker, but for the first time the state will have a woman in the Speaker's chair. So that'll be very good. And I think the big thing from our perspective is we just really don't quite know how exactly this will change the political dynamic. Frank Chopp was such a powerful figure in Olympia that the dynamics are just changing, and we'll see how that plays out. Obviously, next year is an election year. The legislators cannot raise money for the races until session is done, so they're going to have a pretty strong incentive to get done in 60 days as well. All the House members and about half of the Senate are going to be up for election this next year. So our advice for you on your legislative agenda is to keep it pretty short in this supplemental year, to keep it, into ideas that are pretty easy to comprehend. Keep in mind not just your short-term objectives, but also your long-term objectives, and we have an issue that we're recommending on that for your legislative agenda, to be playing for the long game a little bit. Take into account the fact that Democrats control, so some issues are just not going to be politically feasible in this climate. Consistency, building on our past success, is important as well. So we have 3 items that we're suggesting for you that you lead with. The first, you heard about the interlocal agreement. This is related to that, obviously. Really starting to tee up for the 2021 legislative session, not making a request in 2020, but talking very affirmatively with your delegation and other legislators about the capital budget requests that will be coming from the city to support this project. You're very familiar with this and starting to tell the story to build some momentum, to get your legislators excited, to give them the opportunity to work with their peers and start laying the foundation for that as well. I think you're familiar with all the points here on the slide, but really just since this is going to be such a big request, really taking the opportunity to lay a good foundation there.
What Josh and I have been talking about is, since this is a short session, we really don't have an ask this year. It's really laying the foundation, because I believe next year we're gonna see upwards to $1 million for real estate acquisition for the community center, and to start talking about the community center, what it means to our community, job creation, the economic impact it could create. So it's probably the first of a couple of different asks we're going to make over multiple sessions. It's going to take us a few years to get to a point where we're breaking ground on this thing, and this will be the first of probably a couple of asks. So sorry to interrupt you.
No, actually, I was just about to say, if you have questions or comments, please interrupt me at any time. Part of the strategy here, too, is if we were going to get capital budget funding this next session, the reality is we wouldn't be able to get very much because there's just not that much available, and we'd have to fight really hard for it. So let's keep our political capital on the capital budget held in reserve right now until we really have this teed up for 21. So that's the strategy that we're thinking. The other idea, continuing to carry through on the request for the 2 roundabouts on Sedgwick where it intersects with 16. We asked last year for $3 million per roundabout. This is going to be tied up in the overall transportation conversation. And, bluntly, I think no one would be surprised that it's not a good likelihood that we get this funded in 2020. But similar to the downtown center, we need to be keeping the momentum going. We did do a good job last year of building some momentum on this. If you'll recall, when Senator Hobbs came out with his proposed new project transportation list for a new revenue package, he included these on behalf of Senator Randall, so that was a very positive thing. So our goal at this point is to continue talking about this project. Whenever they do break loose with a new revenue package, we want to see this included, just like Senator Hobbs had proposed. I will just add that I appreciate Mr. Dorsey, Councilmember Ashby. We had the 2 leaders of the House Transportation Committee, Representative Fye and the ranking member, Representative Barkas, came out this summer. We had a chance to take a look at where these would be going in. So we're doing our foundational work to get House education built up to what we have it in the Senate as well. That was prior to the initiative passing. And then the last 2, really, the foster pilot program we know is extremely important to the city. Keeping our eyes, we don't expect anything negative on this legislative session, but wanting to make sure legislators are aware that the city is participating in this task force, that we have a project, and that anything negatively that comes forward, potentially, that we're positioned and have some education done to prevent anything from happening. The economic development tools is a reference to AWC's push that they'll be making on behalf of cities to authorize tax increment financing at the statewide level, which would be another economic development tool for you to use in your downtown core. So that's what we are proposing. I'm happy to answer questions. I know you have a really rough agenda, so I'm going to try and be shorter than even usual, but I am happy to answer questions.
Just a quick one, Mayor. Josh, there was, I think, the first hearing today on I-976 before a judge. Did anything come out of that?
I haven't had a chance to hear. I didn't get a chance to watch it or hear, but
Yeah, the 6 o'clock news, there was nothing on it, so I didn't know if you had any update.
yeah, no, I don't,
Okay.
sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Other questions for Josh? All right, thank you, Josh.
Well, thank you. We love working with you and looking forward to another successful session.
So in your packet is the one pager that we we're still working on this. The back side of that, we're still working on a pretty graphic of the community center project, what that looks like, and some of the economic data and other detailed information will be the back page of that. We don't have to didn't feel we had to have that ready tonight, but when we head down to Olympia, we'll definitely have that polished up and ready to go, and I'll share a copy of it with you. Councilmember Diener?
So the, on page 112, fourth line down, it says a regional development team has created a master plan.
I'm not on page 112 yet, sorry. Which, are you talking about in the community event center?
Yeah, fourth line down.
1, 2, 3, 4, a region, okay.
Has created a master plan.
Um,
I don't know that we've actually seen a master plan.
Yeah, like I said, this document still needs
Okay.
some work. We don't have a master plan yet, you're right. This is part of a master plan project, so you're correct.
Okay.
Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I would ask Josh that really keep an eye on Foster for us. If you hear any rumblings or anything, just keep us really ahead of the curve on anything that you're hearing.
Yeah, we desperately need the water that comes from that. Go ahead and step the microphone if you could.
I appreciate your dispensation. I know you have a really busy agenda. I was really remiss at the beginning to introduce my associate, Annika Vaughn. I know you had met Trevor Justin last year. Trevor left me last summer, but I'm really fortunate to have Annika. She is a fresh graduate out of University of Washington Political Science. She interned with us last year, and she'll be working with Port Orchard, so I just wanted to point her out and say thanks for her work. We're really, really lucky to be able to attract talent at GTH and working on municipal issues, so thank you, and we'll watch Foster.
I think that's as much as laying foundations for these, for Sedgwick and the community center, it's about playing defense and keeping the things we have. Our funding for the pathway, is coming from the state, and things like the Foster pilot program, and not losing some of the revenue streams that we have, which the state tends to sweep things when they get tight down in Olympia. Mr. Clausen?
You ready for a motion?
I would love a motion.
Then I move to adopt a resolution thereby approving the 2020-2021 legislative agenda.
Second.
Motion and a second, and I'm not sure, is it the 2021? I think it's just the 2021, but yeah, I don't know why we got that typo on there, but I think we got the intent. And other discussion, any further comments or questions about our legislative agenda? Hearing none, you're voting on a resolution approving the 2021 legislative agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the agenda has been approved. Thank you, Josh. We are on to 7B, adoption of a resolution approving the First Amendment to the 2007 reimbursement agreement with McCormick Communities LLC for utility system improvements. Mr. Bond.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Members of council, on June 11, 2019, after learning that the city's water system was oversubscribed in the 580 and 660 zones, the City Council enacted Ordinance Number 02019, which imposed a 6-month moratorium on the acceptance of applications for building permits in these zones in order to provide the city adequate time to evaluate the water system needs and to ensure adequate water and fire flow for these zones. Since that time, the city has negotiated 4 agreements. One between the city of Bremerton and McCormick Communities. Actually, the city wasn't involved in that, but there is an agreement between McCormick Communities and the city of Bremerton to expand well 1R and extend water mains to bring that online. There's a second agreement between Port Orchard and Bremerton, which was approved on the 12th of November, that provides for an increase in water supply on a temporary basis from the city of Bremerton. There's an agreement between Port Orchard and McCormick Communities before you tonight, and finally, during the consent agenda, we approved the agreement between the fire district and the city to provide for nesting of fire storage in the 580 reservoir. On an interim basis. Thank you, Mark. The agreement attached to this packet is the first amendment to the 2007 reimbursement agreement for utility extension. This amendment will result in the construction of a new reservoir serving the 580 zone, as well as the transmission main needed to connect that reservoir to developments in the 580 zone. The proposed improvements will allow for the separation of the Port Orchard and Bremerton water systems. The agreement also anticipates that McCormick and the city will work together towards addressing the reimbursement for McCormick's development of Well 12. McCormick and the city have agreed to work towards negotiating additional agreements in the future for the following issues: the 660 zone reservoir and booster pump station, construction of traffic improvements, and the extension of entitlements. These later negotiations will include addressing a full waiver of McCormick's claims against the city in satisfaction of performance under the 1998 purchase and sale agreement from when the city bought the McCormick water system. With the approval of this amendment agreement and lifting of the development moratorium in the 580 and 660 water zones, McCormick will be dismissing its remaining pending lawsuit for damages against the city. Staff recommends approval of the resolution, thereby approving the first amendment to the 2007 reimbursement agreement for utility system improvements.
Really?
I move to adopt a resolution thereby approving the First Amendment to the 2007 reimbursement agreement for utility system improvements.
Seconded.
Second by Councilmember Clausen. So I know this was covered in detail at the work study, but are there any other questions or comments to bring forward this evening? Councilmember Roosevelt?
Just a comment, Mayor, yourself, McCormick, and also staff, great job on getting this put together and bringing it forward in a timely manner.
Yeah, maybe just one additional comment that maybe not everyone's familiar with, but it's been a really complicated issue with where McCormick came from, being in the county and moved to the city, and with water tied to the city of Bremerton. This really, lays the path forward to clean up a lot of things that needed cleaning up, and so, it's probably even a bigger deal than maybe what meets the initial eye. So congratulations on everyone who worked so hard to get it to this point.
I agree. It was an extremely complex issue and involved all of these entities. Councilmember Ashby.
Yes, with that said, the complexity of the issue, I very much appreciated the simplicity of the amendment because I found it easy to go through and follow and understand exactly what we were doing.
Other comments?
Thank you to staff.
All right. Questions? Okay, hearing none. You'll be voting on the adoption of a resolution approving the First Amendment to the 2007 reimbursement agreement with McCormick Communities LLC for utility system improvements. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. Congratulations, Eric. So we're to 7C, adoption of an ordinance terminating an emergency water moratorium opposed by ordinance number 20-19 as amended by ordinance numbers 20-19A and 39-19. Mr. Bond.
Thank you. As was mentioned on the previous agenda item, we passed a water moratorium in the 580, 660 water zones in Port Orchard this past summer. We now have agreements with the South Kitsap Fire and Rescue, the City of Bremerton, and now an amendment to an agreement with McCormick Woods that allows us to move forward with lifting the water moratorium in this area. The ordinance before you tonight repeals that moratorium and also declares an emergency, giving this ordinance immediate effect. And the reason for that emergency was that the Thanksgiving holiday and publication deadlines meant that we have building permits ready to issue that we would not be able to issue until mid-December. And so this is relief to the end user, the builders who have lots and are unable to pull those permits. And so as soon as we are ready, probably early next week, we can start issuing permits with this being an emergency ordinance. So the staff recommendation is to approve an ordinance terminating the Port Orchard water moratorium as imposed by Ordinance 02019 and 02019A and 039-19 and declaring an emergency necessitating that this ordinance take effect immediately upon its adoption.
Councilmember Clausen.
Mr. Mayor, I move that the city council adopt an ordinance terminating the Port Orchard emergency water moratorium that was imposed by ordinance number 020-19 as amended by ordinance number 020-19A and 039-19 and declaring an emergency necessitating that this ordinance take effect immediately upon adoption.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Cacciardi. And, speaking to this emergency provision, the end user, that the home builder and the folks that are purchasing those homes have kind of got caught in the middle of this. And, I know the utility billing has 20 utility connections applications. They're waiting for this action to process tomorrow. And I believe Nick has more than that in plan review, so I'm not sure what the exact number is. Do you know?
Yeah, we're over 50 applications. Since we passed 039-19, which allowed the submittal of permits but not the issuance, we took in over 50 permit applications, and several of those are ready to issue.
So, it's Councilmember Rose Pepe?
Yeah, I would agree that the staff report was a little light on the need for the emergency declaration, and I think Councilmember Cucciardi could just fill in a little bit more, if you wouldn't mind, Sean, bring it forward.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Thank you, council member. This has been an issue that none of us wanted to be in the middle of. It was absolutely the right thing to do. We were dealing with a matter of public safety, and as a result of that, the different stakeholder groups that came together to create solution. And I think just for the public's knowledge, some of the people that may have been maybe not at the center stage here, but it are builders that have previously purchased these lots. They are citizens that have called me that have put deposits down to build their dream home for themselves and their family. It is the many jobs that are being represented that are sitting on the sidelines waiting to build these homes. There are legal risks to the city and all of its citizens, and so I think with where we've been and for the incredible amount of effort that's been put together, I think it is appropriate that we do not delay any further. I know it's unfortunate we're dealing with a holiday, but it's time to release this, and so for those reasons, I will be definitely voting in favor for this emergency action.
Other comments? Questions for Mr. Bond? Okay, you'd be voting on the adoption of an ordinance terminating the emergency water moratorium imposed in the McCormick Woods area. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hear none, the ordinance passes. We are to our next item, 7D, adoption of an ordinance authorizing a part-time position and pay rate for an intern position in the Department of Community Development, because I hear they have a couple of building applications to approve.
Well, as you can see by the number of times my name appears in this agenda, we are quite busy in my department. At the last Finance Committee meeting, we presented the Finance Committee with a proposal to create a planning internship position lasting between 3 and 6 months and less than 16 hours per week, depending on the availability of whoever we select and other educational commitments. Internships provide students with valuable experience in resume building, as well as offering them a glimpse into the real-world application of their studies. Partnering with educational institutions also provides for a good conduit for future employees in support of the profession and, of long and short-term planners. A job description is attached to this proposal, and this cost can be absorbed into our existing budget due to vacancies that we had throughout the year of certain positions. We have additional money in the salary line item for the budget. The recommendation is to approve an ordinance authorizing the creation of a part-time temporary planning intern for the DCD and approving a pay rate for the position as provided in the ordinance. And one other note, because Mr. Bonjukian is here in the audience, his son was a previous intern of mine and is now working at Makers Architecture, and I think that I hope to find somebody that is as productive and successful as he was as an intern for me. So that's just an example of somebody who we have hired in the past.
Councilmember Clausen.
Mayor, I move to adopt an ordinance authorizing the creation of one part-time temporary planning intern position for the Department of Community Development and approving a pay rate for the position as provided for in the ordinance.
Second.
By Councilmember Ashby. Any questions for Mr. Bond on this matter?
Just one comment. When my daughters did internships, they gave them experience and no pay, so I'm glad that we're moving forward with helping with a little bit of a salary to get them some experience too.
Other comments or questions for Mr. Bond? Okay, with that, you'll be voting on the adoption of an ordinance authorizing a part-time position and rate of pay for an intern position in the Department of Community Development. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the ordinance is passed.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
I would request that we rearrange the agenda a little bit, and could we take item J, since
Yes.
we have folks that are interested,
That-
and move that up?
Certainly. I will, with no objection from anyone else? Clerk Randerson, you okay with that, even though we passed an agenda already? All right, we will move to item J, approval of an interlocal agreement with the South Kitsap Facilities, or the Kitsap Public Facilities District for the South Kitsap Community Center. Mr. Bond, I guess, it says my name. Application, so, my goodness, so let me get to that.
I made it short for you.
You want, all right. Okay, the staff and I have been working with the Public Facilities District on an interlocal agreement regarding the joint funding of the South Kitsap Community Center, also referenced in the attached ILA as the regional center and the South Kitsap Special Events Center. After several meetings, an agreement has been finalized and is being presented this evening. The proposed agreement provides for up to $12 million in funding for the city. The staff recommends approval of the interlocal agreement with the Kitsap Public Facilities District for the South Kitsap Community Center. And with that, just a little more background. This has a number of steps, and the first is starting with a feasibility study. And there's multiple check-ins. There is a heck of a lot of work to be done yet beyond this interlocal agreement, including engaging our lobbyist and finding the additional $6 to $8 million we're going to need to make this happen. It involves, as we know, a master plan project that has Kitsap Bank's new corporate campus in it, and the creation of new jobs and housing units in our downtown. And I think it could be transformational to our downtown. New library, an event center, and other uses that yet to be determined and what those could be. So with that, I'd appreciate a motion. Councilmember Rosa Pepe.
I move to authorize the mayor to approve an interlocal agreement with the Kitsap Public Facilities District for the South Kitsap Community Event Center.
Second it?
Second by Councilmember Clausen. Questions for myself or Mr. Walton has joined us also from the Public Facilities District. Mr. Rosepepe?
I'd just like to say thank you to the Kitsap Public Facilities District. I know it was a very arduous debate and certainly took its time, but with a very happy result for South Kitsap. And thank you both of you gentlemen, and thank you also to the whole district. So appreciate it.
Mr. Clausen.
I would echo the same. Thank you guys for your hard work on this thing, and we're excited, as you can tell, to get this project moving forward. I would also like to just mention that the attached documents, especially the agreement of tasks, I thought, kind of like you were referring on the other, was nicely laid out and simple to follow, and we have a lot ahead of us, so.
We do.
Looking forward to it.
Councilmember Diener.
I too would like to thank the PFD for the work on this. You know, you guys had a few meetings and there was rough and tumble for a little bit, but thank you. And I also have a comment on the proposed ILA as well. So if you want to turn to page 331, there's task 2.4, and there's also task 3.3. 3.3 speaks to determining estimated facility operating costs. I'd also like to see us look at placing that as well in task 2.4 so that we have a good understanding with the alternatives of what those operating costs may be, and that perhaps 3.3 is a refinement of those estimated operating costs.
And one of the things Mr. Bond and Councilmember Ashby questioned too earlier today, how we're going with, you know, with everything else we've got going on in the city, how are we going to be able to tackle this too? And one beyond the feasibility study, we're planning on going out with an RFP that hiring one consultant to do all of these tasks. And they might have sub-consultants, but we're not, I don't think we're going, it would be highly unlikely that we are going to enter into separate agreements for all these. We just simply can't, the procurement, the staff time related to managing all those contracts, we're gonna need to hire one consultant to manage this all of these up to the real estate acquisition, and then it's a step beyond that.
Will that be a direct expense to the city?
It's funded from
Or will
this-
it be funded
It's
through?
funded, yeah, it's funded out of this agreement, yes. I mean,
The
they're.
consultant is, okay.
Yes. Well, there'll be that, yeah, the firm that does this work. We want a firm that, we're gonna seek a firm that does all of this work in one package.
So I guess my comment was really making sure that when we look at the alternatives for,
We're looking at the cost at
we
the
are
same
also
time.
understanding
The costs.
some of the costs. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good point. Other comments or questions?
It's gonna take a lot of specialties to pull this off. There's a lot of very unique issues related to more than just simply doing an RFP and bidding.
Yeah, well, and it's public outreach. We've got a ton of, and it's gonna need to dovetail into our parks plan that we're you know, just beginning to launch. It's design, it's determining the other uses. But yeah, it is, but Mr. Bond feels that there are consultants out there that do this
No, I
line of
agree,
work.
but it's gonna take a lot of specialties to.
Yeah, and then a lot of specialties under that one consultant. That's true. Yes. Councilmember Ashby?
My other comment is I'm very supportive of the project. I'm very supportive of the bookend for Mr. Mahan on both sides of our city and his career. And I understand that the city's taking the lead on this, and I appreciate all that. It's important to me that we have some commitments from our partners as soon as we can achieve that.
Yes.
Whether it's other public partners or private partners. I appreciate what the city's doing. I want it to go forward. I want it to be successful. How can we make it happen? But I do want to see some commitment from some other groups as we move this on.
Yes, and point well taken, and we've probably got, in my opinion, the best outcome we could have asked for in the Port
Yes.
District race. Gary Anderson is very supportive of this project. The Library District, you know, obviously is a partner in this, and we have their support, but we've got an agreement we need to work out with them. And a harebrained idea I have is you know, somebody's got to manage the conference facility too. And our Chamber of Commerce has woefully inadequate office space. And Matt Murphy was out ill just before I left town on my vacation. We had plans to go up and visit the Kingston. The Kingston, I think, is Village Greens is absolutely great example of what we should be trying to create and replicate, and how they did that. And Mr. Murphy is interested in that. You know, he's got a board he's got to answer to, but I think there's an opportunity to partner with the chamber and house them in in our downtown, right in the midst of this, and potentially have them managing this for this. Otherwise, we're going to be paying someone to manage it. But there's many, many details to be worked out and before we break ground on this for certain. But I'm so encouraged that we're at this point here tonight, but much more to do.
Got to take the first step.
Yep. Other comments or questions? Be voting to approve an interlocal agreement with the Kitsap Public Facilities District for the South Kitsap Community Event Center. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion is approved. Thank you. You may. And I'll be reaching out next week, Mike, to talk about the feasibility study. So we're back to item E in our agenda, which is adoption of an ordinance amending the appeal provisions of Port Orchard Municipal Code, chapters 9.3, and this is Mr. Bond.
Thank you. Port Orchard Municipal Code, Section 9.30 nuisances provides for appeals of abatement orders to be heard by the City Council and requires appeals to be filed within 5 days of the date of an abatement order. The proposed ordinance will allow 10 days for the filing of appeals consistent with other sections of the municipal code and have appeals heard by the abatement hearing officer, which was a recently created position that the judge currently serves in. The staff recommendation is to adopt the ordinance amending Chapter 9.30 as presented.
Mr. Mayor?
Okay, Councilmember Ashby.
I move to adopt an ordinance amending the appeal provisions of the Port Orchard Municipal Code, Chapter 9.30.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Lucarelli. Questions on this matter of Mr. Bond? Seems pretty straightforward. We'll be voting on the adoption of an ordinance amending the appeal provisions of the Port Orchard Municipal Code in chapters 9.30. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. We are to 7F, adoption of an ordinance approving, we are to that, aren't we? Approving the 2019, approving the 2019 Port Orchard Municipal Code, Title 20 Housekeeping Amendments. Mr. Bond.
In March 2019, the City Council adopted a new Title 20 zoning code and zoning map. Since that time, staff has kept track of a number of minor errors, inconsistencies, and omissions that were overlooked when the code was adopted, which staff wishes to address in one cleanup or housekeeping ordinance. The Planning Commission held a hearing on the Title 20 housekeeping amendments on November 5th, 2019, and recommended City Council approve these amendments. On November 19th, the City Council reviewed the amendments and recommended minor changes to the ordinance, which have been incorporated into the final ordinance. And those ordinances, that change, if you remember, had to do with how many days agencies have to comment on a determination of complete application. I sent out an email with outlining the language change, but essentially there was confusion at the work study meeting that we asked, like the Department of Health, West Sound Utility District, if they have a reason that an application is not complete, we ask them to let us know within 15 days. That's not their comment on the overall application. They have much more time for that. So with that, staff is recommending adoption of the ordinance as presented.
Councilmember Diener.
Mr. Mayor, I move to adopt an ordinance approving the 2019 Title 20 housekeeping amendments.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Rosa Pepe. Questions for Mr. Bond? I'd just like to commend Mr. Bond this evening. For the first time in his 5 years, how long have you been with the city? 6 years? 6.5 years? He is using his tablet tonight. He did not bring 2 reams of paper to tonight's meeting. I actually gave him a pointer on how to use his device before we showed up, that is scary.
Well, it appears to be good advice, because he's doing it.
He's doing a good job over there, I tell you. You wouldn't know.
I could not bring myself to print 300 pages, and since my name is on every item.
Mark Dorsey should be chastised over there for his 2 reams of paper.
You want to borrow?
So we'll work with Mark next week, all right? So,
2020 resolution.
yeah, 2020 resolution. All right, we're back to item F on the agenda. No questions about the
I do have a-
housekeeping? Okay.
No, I do have a comment, because we did go over this quite thoroughly at work study last week. But I would like you to pass on to Carrie Salee, the long-term planner. I asked her to reformat some of this because of the way the outline went. I was losing numbers and letters, and she did that, and it's much easier to read today. So thank her very much for her effort to help me.
Carrie has done a phenomenal job in code development in the last few years, and she's been a tremendous asset to the city. So, yes, please pass that on.
Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to thank staff for the work on this, and also comment that it's nice that we have an atmosphere when we know that there are changes that need to be made, that we can go ahead and make them, and they don't have to sit and wait. So I like that we're as nimble as we are.
Good to hear. All right, with that, you'd be voting on the adoption of an ordinance approving the 2019 Port Orchard Municipal Code Title 20 Housekeeping Amendments. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion is approved. We are to 7G, adoption of a resolution confirming mayoral appointments to boards, committees, and commission. Clerk Greinerson.
And the council and the audience aren't looking at an agenda, and I'm reading my staff report, so I'll see what I can do to catch up to Nick. So with that, annually, the clerk's office reviews the expiring terms and/or vacancies of members of various boards, committees, and commissions. The mayor has appointed or recommended the following persons to the boards, committee, and commissions. So Planning Commission appointment of Joe Morrison for a 4-year term expiring December 31st, 2023, and the reappointment of David Bernstein and Mark Trenery for 4-year terms expiring December 31st, 2023. And the Design Review Board appointment of Sarah Simon for a 3-year term expiring December 31st, 2022, and a reappointment of Dave Jeffcoat for a 3-year term expiring December 31st, 2022. The Building Boards of Appeals appointment of Seth Keeley for a 5-year term expiring December 31st, 2024. Kitsap County Capital Grant Recommendation Committee, the reappointment of Chris Stansberry for a 1-year term expiring December 31st, 2020. And Kitsap County Services Grant Recommendation Committee, appointment of Alicia Beeler for a 1-year term expiring December 31st, 2020. The mayor recommends the adoption of the resolution confirming his appointments as presented.
Councilmember Ashby?
Yeah, I move to adopt a resolution confirming the mayor's appointments to the boards, committees, and commissions as set forth in the resolution presented.
Seconded.
Second by Councilmember Clausen. Sometimes it's very difficult to find volunteers, and we've got, I think, so many exciting things going on in our community. And what's really heartwarming is I've got people coming to me, and so throughout the year I make a list and talk as I talk to these folks, and it's just really neat the number of people that are coming forward and want to get involved in the things that are going on in our city. And I'll just briefly, if I can, take a moment and talk about some of these folks and how I got to know them or why they want to get involved. So with the Planning Commission, Joe Morrison he and his wife Claire moved to our city a couple of years ago. They're from Anchorage, Alaska, and they bought Hannah Langer's home here downtown. And his wife Claire is a kindergarten teacher here at, I think, South Kobe, and Joe still works for the city of Anchorage. He manages an economic development fund there and works remotely primarily. Does go to Alaska a couple times a month for work. But I'm just really appreciative of Joe stepping forward and wanting to get involved in the Planning Commission. Dave Bernstein I know him as Dr. Bernstein. I've known him for a number of years. His son is actually a planner and kind of prodded him to get involved in our city. And I think he's very detail-oriented. And Mark Ternary is a member of my Rotary Club, and I've known Mark for a number of years. So those two are reappointments to expiring terms. Sarah Simon, I believe I met her this summer. She came to my office and met with me, and a stay-at-home mom, and she moved to our community and just came and said, I'd like to find a way to get involved. And I felt she was a good fit for our design review board. Dave Jeffcoat, we all know, works at Kitsap Bank and lives downtown, and he's being reappointed to the design review board. The Building Board of Appeals, Seth Keeley is actually the son of Scott Keeley. Their family has owned George's Electric here in Port Orchard for many, many years, and I couldn't figure out here. This is the one I was panicking on a little bit because Scott wasn't returning my calls, and turns out I finally talked to Seth's wife Jill, and he says, "Well, I bought the company and they're not involved in it anymore." So I talked to Seth, and now Seth, as the owner of the company, is stepping forward and filling these Building Board of Appeals they're professionals in various specialties, and he serves as in the electrical piece of this. I don't know that we've ever had this board meet, but if somebody feels Mr. Bond's department is being, I guess, not fair with them, there's an appeal board to be heard of a peer group. And so I'm thankful that Seth is stepping in for his father in that seat. And then Chris Stansberry, for the last 3 years, has served on both of the capital grants and the services grants, and because I haven't been able to find anybody that was willing to the time commitment for that. And so Chris is now stepping back to just do one, and then Alicia Beeler, who initially filed for a council seat and then withdrew, and I met with her, and she was wanting to get involved in somehow in our city government, and so she's going to do the grant services recommendation committee for us. So it's kind of a high level of the individuals that I'm bringing forward tonight. So other questions of me of the appointments? Okay. With that, you'll be voting on the confirmation of the mayoral appointments to boards, committees, and commissions. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the resolution is approved. We are to 7H, adoption of a resolution approving a contract with KPFF Consulting Engineers for the 2020 to 2025 on-call bridge maintenance program and procurement procedure documentation. Mr. Dorsey.
Thank you, Your Honor, council members. Please see the revised resolution that was in there. I actually did correct that before you sent me the email back, so.
Before you get too far, the date is still wrong.
Which date?
Yeah, you have it December instead of November, because we'll be voting on it tonight.
December 26th. Okay, it's not December. Sorry, November.
Just the Scribner's error.
Anyway, so it's a revised. Alrighty, with that glaring mistake identified. So as required by Federal Highway Administration and with oversight provided by Washington State Department of Transportation Highway Local Programs, the City of Port Orchard has provided a bridge management program for the Lund Avenue Bridge since 2013 and the Bay Street Pedestrian Pathway Bridge since 2015 through the hiring of a professional services consultant. In 2016, based upon a recommendation of the state auditor, the city will continue the bridge management program on both Lund Avenue and Bay Street using an on-call professional services contract with the procurement procedures consistent with RCW 3980. Therefore, on September 30th, the city's Public Works Department selected 3 qualified firms from the current professional services roster, which is listed in Exhibit A. Main category engineering services, with the subcategory being bridge consulting. Staff then scored and selected KPFF consulting engineers for the continuation of the bridge management program. On October 1st, 2019, staff completed the mandatory bidder responsibility checklist. And October 17th, 2019, the city's Public Works Department received a viable scope, budget, and timeline for KPFF consulting engineers for the 2020-25 bridge management program, with a 6-year not-to-exceed total of $212,145 without written authorization. Please note, The 6-year proposal is for the program only and does not include the costs of scheduled maintenance and repairs. And there's the 6-year maintenance and repair plan that's attached that you can see which things are kind of bridge maintenance items and then which things are their bridge administration items. And that document is what Noah and I use moving forward for the next 2 biennial budgets to make sure we program those dollars. So staff recommends that the City Council adopt a resolution thereby approving contract 00120 with KPFF Consulting Engineers for the 6-year total amount not to exceed $212,145 for the 2020-2025 on-call bridge management program and documenting the professional services. And if you do look at their proposal, let me see, on page 312 of 386, you'll see the different allocations in the different years for their program. So again, that'll be what Noah and I will be using for programming these services. And then they have the schedule of activities that's on the other appendix that lists, it's on page 316, and I've highlighted in yellow on Exhibit C the items that are associated with this contract, and then there's the other items that we budget for where we hire Seattle DOT or WashDOT or our staff does things.
Councilmember Lucarelli.
To adopt a resolution thereby approving contract number C001-20 with KPFF Consulting Engineers in the 6-year total amount not to exceed $212,145 for the 2020 through 2025 on-call bridge management program and documenting the professional services procurement procedures pursuant to RCW 39.80.
Second.
Questions for Mr. Dorsey on this matter? Got all the dates corrected, Mr. Clausen?
Yeah, this is just kind of a little bit outside of the management program, but if these folks, this engineering firm is going to be familiar with our bridge, in particular the Lund Bridge, will we have the ability to call them out on an emergency basis? Say, for example, in the event of an earthquake, we can have them come assess the structure to see if it's safe?
Yeah, absolutely. So through FHWA, we're required to have the bridge management program, and as part of that federal oversight, if we have an earthquake, we're actually required as a city to close the bridge until somebody from WashDOT or our consultant, KPFF, can be responsive. And KPFF more than likely will be more responsive than WashDOT because of the number of bridges that they have direct oversight with.
That's why I was curious if we could call them out and get them here, so.
Well, we won't have to call them out. Actually, they'll immediately contact us in their bridge management program, and they'll be coordinating staff to get out on the road. That's part of their emergency operations plan.
Perfect, thank you.
Other questions for Mr. Dorsey? Talking about the Lund Bridge a lot tonight. All right, with that, you'll be voting on the adoption of a resolution approving a contract with KPFF Consulting Engineers for the 2020 to 2025 on-call bridge management program. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. We are to 7I, approval of amendment number 2 to contract number 52-18 with Northwest Urban Law, PLLC, for special projects and land use attorney services. Clerk Reinerson.
June 26, 2018, Council approved a contract with Northwest Urban Law, PLLC. The agreement is for special projects and land use-related attorney services. On September 10, 2019, Council approved a contract amendment number 1, adjusting the compensation portion of the agreement to $100,000, with all the other terms and conditions of the original contract remain the same. Staff is still in need of land use legal services, and the current contract expires on December 31st, 2019. Staff has prepared amendment number 2, extending the term of the agreement of the agreement to December 31st, 2020, with a one-year renewal option. This would put the final expiration date of December 31st, 2021. Staff recommends the approval of amendment number 2 to contract number 52-18 as presented.
Councilmember Chang?
I move to approve amendment number 2 to contract number 052-18 with Northwest Urban Law PLLC for special projects and land use attorney services as presented.
Second?
Second by Councilmember Rosa Pepe. Jennifer Robertson, who is Northwest Urban Law, was instrumental in us solving our differences with McCormick and coming to an agreement. And while this comes to $100,000, we only pay her. That's the maximum amount of this, and I know we've still got some work to do on the McCormick agreement, but I hope we come nowhere near that maximum this year that we did this current year. She'll typically be well under $5,000 a month in what we spend on legal services with her, but we felt it was appropriate to leave it at $100,000 because we still have quite a bit of work to do on at least 3 more agreements with McCormick Communities related to transportation and other entitlements that we need to work out. So just a little more background on why the agreement's written the way that it is. Other questions for me on this matter? Okay. With that, you'll be voting on the approval of amendment number 2 to contract number 52-18 with Northwest Urban Law PLLC for special projects and land use attorney services. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The contract amendment is approved. We already completed item J. We're on to item K. Approval of amendment number 1 to contract number 40-12 with Kitsap County Department of Emergency Management for emergency management services. Clerk Reinerson.
Council approved an interlocal agreement with the Emergency Management Services between Kitsap County, the City of Bainbridge Island, the City of Bremerton, and the City of Paulsbo to establish a program to manage emergencies and disasters. On October 28, 2019, the mayor received a letter and an amendment to the interlocal agreement from Kitsap County Department of Emergency Management. The letter stated that the amendment addresses the construct of the Emergency Management Council is revised for limited programmatic support to Bainbridge Island and outlines the financial contribution formula associated. If council approves the amendment, then the KCDEM will move forward to adopt revisions to the county emergency management ordinance. And staff did provide you a copy of that letter as well as the draft ILA. With that, staff recommends the approval of amendment number 1 to contract 40-12 as presented.
Councilmember Rosa Pepe.
I move to authorize the mayor to execute amendment number 1 to contract number 040-12 with Kitsap County Department of Emergency Management for emergency management services.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Diener. So a little background on this is that a year ago, Bainbridge Island stepped out and hired their own emergency management person. The dues for this organization are derived based on population, and so we pay our pro rata share based on everybody except Bainbridge Island. Our really 2 choices here is to agree to this amendment or start up our own emergency management department, which chief would house down in the police department, and certainly got all kinds of room. And so we've come to a new agreement. Bainbridge Island needs to interface with Kitsap Department of Emergency Management. They're going to pay $10,000 this year and $20,000 going forward for that, and we feel it's a fair deal. Wish they were participating at the same level as everybody else, but they've chose to go their own direction. We believe that the contract for services will go up about 3% this current year. It's really tough to predict if you're going to have tornadoes or other disasters. This is a very important service in our county, and to have this ready for us in the event of an emergency. So hopefully that answers any questions you may have about the agreement. Councilmember Teener?
What's our share?
Well, we've got
our
14,000
share?
people. It's derived. So they take the total. The county pays the largest share, obviously.
So what was our share? I'm just curious.
It's
Is it higher than 10?
No
It
one's
was-
on vacation.
Yeah, I don't have the contract in front of me.
Sorry.
It's derived on population, and Bainbridge Island stepped out, so our share went up but it was a year ago. And because of Bainbridge stepping in and contributing $10,000 to the pot, this year our dues only went up about 3%.
What, I had asked the mayor this question earlier today, and he told me 3%, and like you, I'm going, what's our base now? And then I decided to let go of that, and I thought if we're paying $100,000, if it's increased 3%, that's $3,000 to us. And I'm assuming it's much less than
It
that.
is far less than $100.
Oh.
We could not hire, we would need one or more employees. We cannot do this cost effectively ourselves at all. And there's just a different mindset on Bainbridge Island that they're gonna do things differently than the rest of us. So we'll leave it at that. Mr. Clausen.
Yeah, just a question more than anything, if you guys have discussed, how do you coordinate activities and such in the event of a countywide emergency? With Bainbridge being out here doing their own thing, is there?
They have somebody like Liz Clute is our executive director. They have somebody that will interface with Liz from Bainbridge Island versus Liz taking care of Bainbridge Island as well as the whole county. It's
Well, I know that in their organization and their structure that they have in the event of an emergency, they stand up their operation center, and there are different folks that represent that, and I'm just curious as to how they coordinate activities and such with an entity that is kind of out doing their own thing, because there's an awful lot of coordination that occurs.
They just operate under the state's umbrella.
yeah.
So, anytime we've got something like a tornado, you've got the local, then you got DEM if they're around, and then you got the state. So they'll just be functioning.
Directly to the state, but with an I think it's silly, John, to be
Well,
honest.
I know that there is a communication hierarchy that occurs during an event, whether it's a local event or if it's a statewide event, and everything funnels from DEM all the way up to FEMA. And I'm just curious as to, it's more curiosity, it's nothing to do with
It doesn't
this.
make sense. I mean, I couldn't even imagine how you would keep a full-time emergency management employee, let alone two, busy doing emergency management stuff in a city this size, like full-time. They don't.
Well, I just think the logistics of how do you make that work, because I can speak to the transit system. In the event of an emergency, everything stops and we take our direction from DEM. If somebody on Bainbridge Island calls me up, I tell them call DEM, because I'm not taking anything from anybody other than DEM, so I'm just curious.
My understanding is that it's going to be very similar, they're just adding one more person.
Yeah, they're just going to be working through.
They have their own list that's their director managing their operation on
It
Bainbridge
was
Island.
my understanding as well, is it was a sovereignty issue, and they recognize that if there is a major tragedy, the only access to the island is gonna disappear unless you have a boat. And they were looking to be able to function as autonomous as they could in the event that there was no one coming. Whether that's their decision, whether that was wise or not, we've seen when we get an earthquake, but that was my understanding.
And they become truly an island.
Well, and as I say, we take our direction from DEM, and we happen to have 9 boats, so if they need a boat, call DEM.
Call John.
Don't call John.
No, don't call me.
It's $21,000 a year for the services for DEM, and 3% of that would be $630.
Yeah, so, yeah, it's a deal. I can't.
No, it is.
Yeah.
And it was very apparent to me in the earthquake, it's understaffed, that agency is understaffed. And a lot of it is funded through grants. It is what it is, and we're only paying a small share of it. I only have one vote on the board, but they're we need them when things happen, and we need to be prepared. I know we have our own incident command center and resources that we put up at Station 31 at the fire department, and the chief is Chief Brown has graciously taken that new role from Mr. Dorsey, who is glad to hand all those books
I
off.
got another 5 weeks.
So, but yeah, we have our own hierarchy within the city and incident, and we've activated that a couple of years ago, and we really used it during the tornado incident. So, any other questions about Department of Emergency Management? Okay, it's one of the board meetings that I go to once a month on Super Tuesday. So, with that, you'd be voting on the approval of amendment number 1 to contract number 40-12 with Kitsap County Department of Emergency Management for emergency management services. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the contract amendment is approved. We are to 7L, approval of House Bill 1923 grant agreement with the Department of Commerce for a grant to develop a sub-area plan and planned action EIS, and I understand Chief Brown is going to take this one.
Right.
Mr. Bond.
No, I have reams underneath here if you'd like.
All right.
Making sure you're paying attention.
Absolutely.
The city has received a $50,000 grant from the Department of Commerce, which is intended to develop plans and actions that will increase residential building capacity in accordance with engrossed second substitute House Bill 1923. These grant funds, in addition to the funding allocated from other sources, will be used to develop a sub-area plan and planned action environmental impact statement for the downtown and county government campus centers. The project timeline will be from November 27, 2019 to April 1st, 2021. Deliverables will include a draft sub-area plan and a planned action EIS during 2020, and ordinances adopting the final sub-area plan and planned action EIS by April 1st, 2021. The Department of Commerce has prepared a standard grant contract, including a scope of work and budget that requires the mayor's signature. Staff recommends that the City Council authorize the mayor to sign contract 20-63314-045 between the Department of Commerce and the City of Port Orchard for $50,000 for a $50,000 grant to develop a sub-area plan and planned action EIS for the downtown and county government campus centers.
Councilmember Diener.
Mr. Mayor, I move to authorize the mayor to sign a contract 20-63314-045 between the Department of Commerce and the City of Port Orchard for a $50,000 grant to develop a sub-area plan and planned action EIS for the downtown and county government campus centers.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Cacciardi. We're interviewing consultants, I think, in 2 weeks. Is that?
Well, the request for proposals closes tomorrow at 2 o'clock. We've already received at least one, and Mark, Carrie, and I will be meeting on Monday to go through those written proposals and figure out who we're going to interview and then try to get them scheduled. I think that the committee that is doing the interviewing will meet either the 5th, 6th, or 9th. I think there was a preference for the 5th or the 9th based on people's availability, but we also have to see when the consultants are available because it's a short timeline. And then we would bring the consultant contract forward at the final meeting of the year on the 17th, assuming that we can get a scope and a fee ironed out by then. So it's a very aggressive grant timeline, and we are the first awardee to get a contract with Commerce, and we are the first one to select a consultant. So we are really hitting this hard because it's a lot of work to do in a short period of time.
John? It is likely that it will cost more than this $50,000, and we'll need a budget amendment to address that. But until we know what the scope and the contract is, we can't and we don't want to approve a blank check, I guess. I'm hopeful that the county and potentially a developer too will want to see benefit to this and want to kick into it. Whether we can, in reality, make that happen and act fast, we have such a fast fuse on this, to make that happen may not be realistic, but I'm going to ask the question of the county and a couple of other folks that are property owners on the waterfront and try to convince them of the benefit of this planned action EIS. So, Councilmember Diener.
Nick, you want to describe the area, the geographic area that we're considering here?
Yeah, so at the November 12th meeting, I believe it was, we approved the amendments to the comprehensive plan that tweaked the sub-area plan boundaries, and so it's, the county campus is up the hill and roughly from Klein to Sydney back to Givens Field, and then it meets up with the downtown center midway down the hill. And then the downtown center is essentially from the Tweeton's Cheers site on the waterfront and most of the downtown commercial properties all the way out to the West Bay Center, and I think a few properties just to the west of that. And the interesting thing about the grant is that we're going to use this sub-area plan also to seek, or we can use it to seek regional center designation through PSRC, so it's going to be written with that in mind. However, the geographic requirements for a PSRC regional center has a minimum area requirement, and I think we may have to tweak the boundary a little bit further, so there may be a couple of areas added in that get us to that size requirement, and we'll be evaluating that as part of the project.
Okay, Councilmember Diener.
And then are we slated to get another presentation from the county on the courthouse campus?
I believe that's our first meeting in December.
Okay.
And they've been doing quite a bit of work, and Nick's been meeting with their consultant in his spare time.
Thank you.
So, yes, that's coming. And their plan is to, obviously, we've been working hand in hand with them. Parking needs to get solved first, and first and foremost. Their goal is to be working on surface parking at least next year, and hopefully breaking ground on the building late next year if that timeline can be met. So we haven't seen plans yet, and you haven't seen the presentation. So and that is in December, and I believe it might be the first meeting in December. Other questions? Okay, you'll be voting on the approval of a grant agreement with the Department of Commerce for a grant to develop a sub-area plan and planned action EIS. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The grant agreement has been approved. We're to 7M, approval of a memorandum of understanding for denial of a restrictive covenant of the right-of-way located at 639 Bay Street. Mr. Bond, why is this you?
Well, I received the phone call on this while you were on vacation, and I did send out an email to the full city council explaining the situation and making sure that there were no questions about this, but I was contacted by a consultant who was working on the cleanup of the 639 Bay Street property. There was a oil storage tank that was underground that was removed from the site as part of the demolition of that structure. And under the required pollution liability insurance agency requirements, a statement from the city needs to express one of two alternatives, and that alternative would be that we want to apply a covenant to only that private parcel, or we want it to extend into our right-of-way to alert any future person who would be doing something in that area that would do a title search to the potential that there is contamination there. And so in discussing this with Director Dorsey, we thought it was better because any project that we do is going to have a phase 1, phase 2 type process, and we're aware that it's there. We didn't want to have the extra layer of a covenant on that property that we then have to figure out how to remove some years down the road. Also, because the roadway is capped, the contamination that's there would, if it is there, would be left in place. So it's not something that we plan to address anytime soon. But either way, council needs to provide direction on one of these two alternatives, and there's an attached MOU that the consultant provided to us that we put onto city letterhead that basically expresses that first preference of not extending this covenant into the right-of-way.
Councilmember Cachardi?
Mayor, I move to authorize the mayor to sign the attached MOU as presented.
Second.
Diener, second. Other questions for Mr. Bond on this matter? Okay, you'll be voting on the approval of a memorandum of understanding for the denial of a restrictive easement in the right-of-way located at 639 Bay Street. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. We're to our last item, and seems fitting to end with Tremont tonight. So, Mr. Dorsey, we have the change orders number 28 and 29 to contract number 037-17 with Active Construction, Inc. for the Tremont widening project. Mr. Dorsey.
Looking at the wrong piece of paper.
Add a tablet.
Electronically, you could just switch to
I
it.
know. Okay, so on August 13th, 2019, the Port Orchard City Council authorized change orders 25 through 27 for contract C03717 with Active Construction. And at that point, we brought the current value of all change orders to a total of $1.853 million, or 185.3% of the contingency value. Tonight, action is for the approval of change order 28, which is a final adjustment to the force account work that we did for bid item 49A and 1801A and utility potholing, which was 2D. And that total was $194,772.99. And also change order 29, which was the final adjustment to bid item B201, which is the water line revisions. And that total was $190,750. So approval of these change orders brings the current value of all change orders to date to a total of $2.242 million of the contingency value. And remember that the contingency value was the million initial plus the 1.3. So in non-beam counter engineering math, that's 2.3 million. If you talk to Heidi, I make her pull her hair out, but I live in the world of we've got contract plus 2.3, and so we're right now at contract plus 2.242, and so we're supposed to be, we got about 84,000 remaining, and we've been assured by the contractor and the CACM consultant that we're going to have one last final closeout change order where we're going to get some credits back and clean things up, and we won't exceed the 2.3. So that's what the current cost to complete says. So with that, staff recommends that the City Council authorize the mayor to execute change orders number 28 and 29 with Active Construction in an amount not to exceed this total amount, which is $385,522.99. And I did confirm with our current cost to complete, which is somewhere between, around 2.2 within this 89,000, that these change orders were in that list. There was a little bit of, initially when I looked through, I didn't see them. And I'm like, wait a minute, you're saying that we're at 2.2 plus 300,000? And so he went back through and said, no, they were kind of buried. But I found change orders 28, 29 in that cost to complete. So I did confirm that we're good on that.
Councilmember Clausen.
Mr. Mayor, I move to authorize the mayor to execute change order number 28 and number 29 with Active Construction, Inc. in an amount not to exceed $385,522.99.
Second.
Councilmember Diener, seconded. Questions for Mr. Dorsey? Roadway's great. We just gotta finish paying for it.
Wrap it up. Toll.
Get the trailer out of there. All right. No questions for Mr. Dorsey. Be voting on the approval of change orders 28, 29 to contract number 037-17 with Active Construction, Inc. for the Tremont widening project. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the contract change orders are approved. Got one discussion item. It's really not a discussion item. It's just really informational. It's felt for the last 3+ years, for almost 4 years, that we've been just pedaling really hard churning through employees. And so Debbie Lund, our new HR person, did the report that you see in your packet, and you can see overall we've been turning over at about 14% in the city for the last 3 years. Right now, we're standing at 4 job openings. We've got a police officer position. We've got the assistant city engineer position. We're going to interview somebody on Monday for that. We think that we're trying to push him from somewhere else, but he's also interviewing in another city. So, and it's pretty slim pickings out there. So I'm really hopeful we're going to get this person. This is a swell place to work. And we've got a finance position that's open that is actively posted, and 1 public works position. So maybe in January, other than 1 police officer, we could maybe be fully staffed, darn close to it. So that's our goal. It's just kind of speaks to the importance of, we've got money in the budget to conduct a salary survey in 2020. And the importance of that to make sure that we're paying a competitive wage, in comparison to our peers. And we're also, I believe we found a salary consultant too that I'm wanting to do a body of work that looks at our organizational chart to make sure that, we've got the right people in the right places and the right, we're not just, and what our organizational chart should look 3 to 5 years from now, if we continue the growth rate that we currently have. So you'll be probably seeing a contract for that in the first quarter, I would hope. So with that, we're done with.
Can I ask questions?
Certainly.
So is there any, salary is usually one thing that goes into it, but with turning over about 14% on exit interviews, is there any common theme? Is it like
Not because of the mayor, I can assure
No,
you.
city council either, but I didn't know if it was because people are at the retirement age, or people going to other places,
It's been a bit of a mixed bag. Some of it is that retirement. Some of it has been opportunities, other places that, we're a small city and we can't, Thomas Hunter was, it hurt us to lose Thomas. I'm thankful we have Tony now filling that job, and we had somebody from within, and we just recently hired our new foreman that came from Kitsap County. Chris, what's Chris's last name, Tony? Esquire. And came from Kitsap County, has a strong background in safety, and that was something that I felt we needed to strengthen within our organization. In particular in public works, and so it's a mixed bag.
Okay, so
We
there's
just
no
can't.
common theme right now.
I don't know that we've really lost anybody over a wage, but I don't want to. When we shouldn't be leading edge in that, but we need to make sure we're competitive with our peers in other jurisdictions in the county.
Yeah, for Public Works, I can say that we've been poached.
Yeah.
It's a very hot market for civil engineering right now, both in the private sector and the public sector, and neither one of losing Thomas or Mike were intended. They weren't looking. They were just approached and were given very good opportunities, and they took them. But it wasn't. They weren't disgruntled or anything. They weren't looking. It's just very competitive out there right now.
Usually it speaks very well of the city when people are poaching your folks, because it means that you're doing a good job developing them.
Yeah, no, they've, the 2 entities that poached Mike and Thomas are very happy right now.
And Tony signed a life contract, so. Doesn't know that. All right, well, moving on. Any other questions about staffing? Council committees, Finance Committee, I believe you met a week ago, didn't you, or 2 weeks ago?
2 weeks ago, we shared
All right.
it with.
Fine.
so,
I didn't get it, but I'll read the minutes. Let's see here, Economic Development Tourism, you met since?
No, we did not meet in November. We intend to meet the second Monday in December.
Okay. And Utility Committee?
We're meeting December 16th. We did not meet in November.
Okay, and I know I attended the last Sewer Advisory Committee and probably given a report at the last meeting.
Yeah.
Okay. And Land Use? Have you met?
We've reported out on our last meeting, and I don't know that we have any scheduled business activity. Okay, so
right.
probably in the new year.
Lodging tax? Your work's
October
done.
2020, we approved the distribution, so
All right.
everybody's
good to go.
happy, actually.
Well, there's got to be something about chimes and lights.
Tony, do you want to give an update, please?
Yeah.
Wait a minute, Mark.
When I talked to Tony, they were still working down there.
What did you say? Yeah, well, with the addition of the GFI breakers, we've unearthed some electrical issues on the southeast block, the Coffee Oasis block. They're still trying to pinpoint exactly what is going on. The goal by the end of the night is that block will be lit as well. 3.5 out of the 4 blocks are lit at this point. So
They've been down there working all
the other half a block by midday tomorrow will be lit as well. They just didn't have time to hang some of the icicle lights. So by the end of the night, hopefully we'll be functional
hope.
on the Coffee Oasis block.
It looked really,
Some of the receptacles are actually falling apart as he's trying to pinpoint where the electrical issue is. There's bare wires. The thing is you added the GFIs, which is a lot more sensitive than the old outlets. So it's unearthing some of the bare wires that are touching some of the electrical boxes in there, and it's popping the breaker. So he's just trying to pinpoint it. It was a fire hazard.
Yeah.
So.
I take this opportunity to
Long
thank
way to week.
Tony and the Public Works Department because they've been putting a lot of long extra hours trying to deal with this emergency, so.
Yeah, we're lucky we actually got the lights in time. They actually came in yesterday. And there's 8 people down there installing them today. And Mike's, the electrician, is actually gone tomorrow, so I have him down there trying to finalize his part of the job, so the rest of them can finish it tomorrow in time for the tree.
judging?
Judging, yes.
So are you pretty confident that it's going to be done, or should I have the judging postponed until next week?
Let you know in the morning.
Let me know in the morning.
Yeah, I'm pretty confident by midday tomorrow we'll be functional, yeah. I think he's narrowed it down to possibly 2 junction boxes at this point, and he's doing that now, so I'm confident that by the end of the night, we'll be close.
It's an
So,
amazing effort. Thank you very much. It really
I was down there at 2
is.
o'clock and he basically rewired most of it.
Yeah, he pulled some new wire trying to, fix certain areas, but it's just unearthing itself as he keeps popping panels open, so. We'll do what we can.
We've got such a short window because of how late Thanksgiving is. Credit to Tony and his staff. I mean, we've got the super single and all these fabulous implements that go on it, from a dump truck box to a brine tank and our bucket truck. And, we've been using the heck out of that bucket truck, putting Christmas lights up, but we've also got some cold weather coming and the need to get that brine tank on it and get that on the streets, so.
Yeah, so
they've been-
they'll be spraying all day tomorrow. We tried to spray today, and then the weather, the skies opened up and decided to give us rain, so it was a fleeting effort. So tomorrow they'll be spraying for the
Well, Tony, we're
long
glad that
weekend.
you signed that life contract. Yes.
Appreciate it, appreciate it.
So much.
Thank you.
Anything else on chimes and lights?
Actually, everything is moving along very well. The tree on Sunday was askew. I drove by and went, ah! So I called Bill, and he and someone else straightened the tree out after the winds that came up. I know, still. So, but everyone, council, everyone, we look forward to seeing you December 7th. If you could show up, if you're around 5 o'clock at City Hall, we'd love to have you all and to witness one of the best Chimes and Lights events that we've had. We have the port doing so much work also, Kitsap Bank. It's going to be just a beautiful year. And then with Santa moved to the new location, I think it's going to be very vibrant and one cool event. So thank you all. Thank you. And for providing some extra funds to help clean up a situation downtown that needed it anyway. Yes, thank you.
Good job, Cindy.
Thank you.
Mark?
Moving on. Outside agencies, the one I had was Housing Kitsap today, and I was nominated the chair for 2020 of Housing Kitsap.
Glutton for punishment.
So Commissioner Gilder nominated me, so then I nominated him vice chair. Felt it was a fitting act. So, you know, I'm on the finance committee for that agency. We meet every Monday. Commissioner Gilder, Mayor Erickson, and myself, and we just felt it was important that one of the three of us, Mayor Erickson is the current chair this year. Commissioner Gilder, we normally rotate city, county, and city, but Commissioner Gilder is currently the chair of the Association of Counties and just has too much on his plate, so I offered to fill that role. So, council retreat is set for January 17th. I got a fair amount of work to do with that and meet with staff, you know, prior to the holiday or after Thanksgiving holiday. So, mayor's report. As you know, I've been out of town on vacation, so I really don't have one. I got a couple things that I was going to talk about the Christmas lights. We already did that. A little bird just told me that the judge on I-976, the judge will make a decision on the injunction by tomorrow morning. And other than that, just want to wish you and all of you a happy Thanksgiving, and hope you get to enjoy some time with your family and friends. So with that, department,
Well, how did it turn out as far as going around to the neighborhoods to look at lights? We had a doodle poll, and do we know?
I've been drowning, so I'm sorry.
What was the question?
Going around looking at lights and
There's a
Waiting on a date.
There's a doodle. Is
maybe
there a
that
doodle poll?
is that
I haven't-
Janine's?
was a doodle survey.
Respond to the doodle poll. I can have it resent out tomorrow.
Okay.
Would you all respond?
Okay.
Thank you.
It just hadn't gotten there yet. Okay, so Brandy will send that back out tomorrow. Wonderful.
Which
And-
2 to 3?
I responded.
I responded.
I did too.
I didn't. I was just going along because my schedule's clear.
I did not yet.
You can check them all, Jay.
Thank you.
All right, we'll get that figured out tomorrow. All right, department heads. Mr. Dorsey, you have a report for us? Anything to
I
share?
just wanted to apologize for being late and thank the city council for approving the funding for the new fake bells. Because if it weren't for the bells, I was involved in a staff report for the McCormick Pump Station #2 and was typing along, and suddenly I heard the half-hour chime, and I went, oh, darn it, and I ran up here. So thank you for getting those chimes fixed. Otherwise, I would have been really late.
Mr. Bond?
Yeah, I'm feeling inadequate because Mark and Tony have joined Ernest in saving Christmas, and I merely had 11 items on the agenda. I do. You should have noticed. You should have noticed in the parks scope of work that we have to have a kickoff workshop with the Planning Commission and City Council for a joint meeting. And I was hoping you could open your calendars and look at some dates. We were looking at the, one of the options would be to pilot on with work study and either have an elongated meeting, or if there's a light agenda, substitute the work study meeting in January and have the parks consultant come in to really hear from the council members and planning commissioners before they go out to the public. And so if work study on the 21st work is preferable, otherwise some Mondays and Wednesdays and Thursdays in mid-January are available, the 13th, 15th, and 22nd. So I don't know if you need a doodle poll or if,
I think, I believe since we have a retreat on the 17th, we ought to, if there's anything urgent on that 17th, which I can't think of anything that is.
the 21st work study meeting, you mean?
Yeah, we should do the work study on the 21st for that joint meeting with the Planning Commission.
Okay, and would you be available to meet earlier if we needed to start earlier, if there is an agenda item we have to get out of the way before we do the workshop?
Tuesday.
Yes.
January.
Okay.
2019.
Sure.
So I'm hearing you one yes, if we needed to start earlier, half an hour earlier or something?
Yeah.
If need be? Okay,
All right, thank you.
okay. So is that kind of the consensus? We do it on the 21st? Okay. Wonderful. Thanks, Nick. Sharon?
I just wanted to wish everybody a very happy Thanksgiving holiday. Hope you have a good time with your families.
Thank you. Chief?
I just wanted to point out that your officers, in conjunction with Fish and Wildlife, nabbed the black bear that was raiding the mayor's house this afternoon, and
Came from my
he's in-
backyard.
Raided your backyard. He's in custody, and we're dumping him off in Pierce County, so he can't come back.
Pierce County?
Because my wife's going to want to know where the bear is. Is he really going to Pierce County somewhere? What? Really?
What was the size?
Big. I'll show you a
big.
picture. He's big.
I can send a picture out if you guys want, but it won't be till later. No, the best guess is that he lives down the ravine from but that's not a good spot for a black bear, so he's being moved.
Did you
He
send
was.
him to the
I was
people
driving
and
down the road and somebody was stopped, and they've sent me a video of it and a picture of it. But yeah, he came out of my backyard, went up the alley, and heading back towards Blackjack, the ravine on Blackjack Creek.
We're pretty sure he broke out of the jail because that was where we first started getting phone calls. Was that he was running away from the jail.
I have this vision of a bear walking on his legs with handcuffs behind his back with his head down in disgust and heading to
These
Pierce
aren't my
County.
pants.
I have a koi pond. I haven't been home to look to see if
Coilless pond.
Coilless pond, and my dog is safe though. I went home and checked, made sure my dog was good. So. Brandy?
Everybody, happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
All right, we're to our second citizen comment period. Sir, would you like to address the council? Thank you for hanging with us all night.
It's the first time I've been in one of these meetings. Thank you for the suggestion to be here. So I got the suggestion to come to a council meeting to voice my opinion about the parking situation down in downtown for long-term parking. And I got that suggestion from a lady who works in the parking enforcement office downstairs. And the reason why I'm frustrated about it, because well, I don't commute to Seattle a lot. I go there occasionally. By the way, I've been living in this town for 29 years at McCormick Woods. No bear sightings tonight. I live right across the lake from Jay.
Sir, if you could just identify yourself for the record.
Oh,
Your
I'm
name.
sorry, Bob Bonjukian. My son Scott used to work with Nick. So occasionally I go to Seattle. I go to University of Washington Medical Center. I had surgery on my hand recently. I go to their dental clinic. I go to see my son Scott. Occasionally we go to plays, we go to concerts and all that kind of stuff, baseball games. And it seems to be increasingly hard to find a long-term parking place to park downtown. So in frustration, about 2 months ago, I called somebody else in the law enforcement, or the parking enforcement, and she says, I'm going to let you in on a little secret. She says, if you pay for your parking, your daily parking pass, you can park down behind the, right by the marina office and the Kitsap Bank drive-up thing. There's some spots there that says permit parking, Port Orchard. She says, they won't bother you there. Well, I did that 2 weeks ago. I got myself a $20 ticket. I'm going to go to mitigate it here next month. So anyway, my suggestion is let's start thinking about all the new people that are moving here and commuting. Let's think about maybe getting some more paid long-term parking. Maybe some of the 2-hour spots that are down there, that convert them to paid parking or something. John's going to say, well, why don't you just take a bus, right?
Of course.
Anyway, that's my comments. It's frustrating, but I hate to take a chance to go over to Bremerton to find a place to park, because it's just as bad over there when you're trying to catch a ferry. So, that's it. That's my comments.
Wow.
See what we can.
Thank you for sharing your concern.
You betcha.
All right, since you're the only citizen in the audience, I believe our citizen comment period is over, and we don't have an executive session.